when the World Cup was announced for 1994, and it was in 1989 that it was announced, I set my first company up called Play Soccer in 1990, which was started to have soccer stores and also soccer camps. And I did that for 11 years, worked with nearly 2 million kids, and was on the, very proud to be on the front end of the soccer boom in the States. So it's great now when I got there in 1987, it was very difficult to find soccer on TV or to find anything. In fact, one of the World Cup qualifiers for 1990 for the US team was played at a local high school. Now it's played in 100,000 seater stadiums and it's on there. So I, feel very lucky that I was on the front end of the soccer development, and which I think prepared for coaches across continents, because the curriculum that we developed to Play Soccer was called Soccer as Education. It was a way we didn't think we were creating professional soccer players, but we were using the sport to work with young people.
From Coordinate Sport, it's The Drive Phase, a show about sports founders, leaders and experts and the stories behind their business journey. This week, we have the leadership team from the award-winning global NGO Coaches Across Continent, Nick Gates and Brian Suskiewicz. Passion and talent for football are behind the origin story of Coaches Across Continents. Nick and Brian, both talented players, use the sport as a platform for successful careers, moving into business and elite coaching respectively. Coaches Across Continents works globally with local partners to address the UN Strategic Development Goals. During this episode, we take a deep dive into just how they do this, looking under the hood to hear how the team are able to drive impact across 132 countries and work with thousands of leaders. As always, we hear the startup and scale-up story. Nick outlines his transition from building his first successful business, Play Soccer, to becoming a business of football executive in the Premier League with Middlesbrough FC in the early 2000s, before he had the Lightbulb Moment to launch Coaches Across Continent. So sit back and take notes from entrepreneurs scaling their impact. Enjoy the show. Okay, so delighted to welcome two members of the senior team at Coaches Across Continents. The nonprofit is the global leader in using purposeful play and education outside the classroom to address the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Over the last 13 years, the organization has grown to work across 132 countries. So Nick Gates, founder and global strategist, and Brian Suskiewicz, Chief Exec of Strategy. Welcome to the show, guys. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much.
Good morning.
Morning. Yeah, we've got some time differences to contend with, so I've been looking forward to this. In terms of, Brian, whereabouts are you in the world at the moment?
I am currently in the west coast of Nicaragua, enjoy surfing and stuff, and have moved down here for the last couple of years, which is sort of obviously coincided with everyone being sort of in the same spot for the last year. So I'm in a fairly nice spot in terms of beach and weather and stuff. So hopefully people don't get too jealous about that.
Yeah, not a bad spot to be in. I know Nick, normally based in Northeast, so you've got a bit of a commute to where you are at the moment.
Yes, my family moved to Cayman Islands about 30 years ago. So in November of last year, flew out to Cayman, and very, very lucky to be on a virus-free island. I'm back in England in a couple of weeks, so it'd be a strange reintegration into the normal world.
Yeah, hopefully not too for culture shock for you. But I mean, like we always do on the show, trying to get to know you a little bit better. And I guess our first question we normally pose, and it's quite a good one really, in terms of both of you guys who've grown up in different areas. I mean, what would be if you could look back, what would be your earliest sporting memory? So I don't know who wants to jump onto that one first.
I guess I can jump on that. Earliest sporting memories. So I grew up right outside Washington, D.C., obviously in America, and was probably same as everyone else on a lot of these podcasts that I was playing in 5 or 6 different sports teams. And I remember being upset at my very first football team. I think I was about 5 or 6, because our uniform colors were brown and yellow. And I can't make that up. So I had the solid brown shirt with yellow sleeves, and I didn't want my picture taken. So that's probably my first
sounds like a UPS driver.
But I did love the sport, and obviously I stayed with it. I played through university, swam, surf now that I'm in my 40s. Can't really get together 22 guys that easily, but still pretty active.
What was school like for you, Brian, in terms of the US, like I guess primary school, elementary school? Was that kind of from a talent that you were interested in sport, or you have any inspirational individuals that crossed your path at an early age?
I think in the US, it was my age. It's certainly, again, I'm 44. It's a little bit different in that we didn't have a professional league until we were awarded the World Cup. So my aspirations were to play at university. I was able to do that, and university in the US they take it very seriously. I was able to get partial reimbursements on my tuition and stuff, but certainly wasn't a star player, but was good enough to compete at university level. And then once that completed, I had to find something else to do. So I got a master's in education. I was about to go into teaching and got an offer to become a university soccer coach. Did that for 10 years, loved it. By the end, though, was really tired and sort of burned out. And that's when I found Coaches Across Continents, and it was actually an organization, and it was about 2008, 2009 that Nick had just founded. So, for me, I'm lucky in that, my schooling allowed me to do my passions. I was fairly good, but not excellent at sport. Got me through university, and then got to follow my dreams of coaching and playing and wearing shorts and t-shirts every day, and then finding something I love now, which is Coaches Across Continents.
For sure. And I guess football, are we going with football or soccer?
I'm bilingual. I can say either.
Okay, right. So I guess football, obviously you've got a massive connection for both of you in football. And Nick, growing up in the northeast of England, was that a similar story for you in terms of your earliest memories of sport and how that shaped you?
I mean, I know exactly my first memory of sport. My dad was a professional football player for Middlesbrough, and 4.5, 5 years old, I went to Old Trafford to see Manchester United Middlesbrough in an FA Cup tie. I absolutely know exactly when it was from there. So I grew up
inspired from
yeah. So I grew up a football fan and a Middlesbrough fan, and football playing a big part of my life. I was lucky enough to play for the England under-18 team, and then made a decision that education was as important, and I got a scholarship to come over to America, to Harvard, and play there, and was on the front end of soccer and the development of soccer. Yeah, sport is central to my life.
Yeah, so I guess kind of dovetails both of you into the collegiate football or soccer system over there. And Nick, following that, is that where you, early 90s and started the World Cup over in America, you launched another organisation at that point? Is that something that you kind of always, I guess, you're leading an organisation now and found it. Have you always had kind of entrepreneurial tendencies, wanting to do that?
I think so. I think that when the World Cup was announced for 1994, and it was in 1989 that it was announced, I set my first company up called Play Soccer in 1990, which was started to have soccer stores and also soccer camps. And I did that for 11 years, worked with nearly 2 million kids, and was on the, very proud to be on the front end of the soccer boom in the States. So it's great now when I got there in 1987, it was very difficult to find soccer on TV or to find anything. In fact, one of the World Cup qualifiers for 1990 for the US team was played at a local high school. Now it's played in 100,000 seater stadiums, and it's on there. So I, feel very lucky that I was on the front end of the soccer development, and which I think prepared for Coaches Across Continents, because the curriculum that we developed at Play Soccer was called Soccer as Education. It was a way we didn't think we were creating professional soccer players, but we were using the sport to work with young people. So yeah, I think, like Brian, very, very lucky that combining soccer and education throughout my life and still today.
Brian, I know you said that obviously head coach at the university level, that collegiate environment is pretty intense, right? I know you alluded to being a bit burnt out with it.
I think every coach that's at any competitive level, we were 5-6 days a week training, 2 games a week. We all take it just as seriously as the top professionals do. We just don't get the publicity and the paychecks that they do. And I wasn't able to, for me, after I was only associate head coach, so I wasn't quite the top man, but there got to be a point, and I hear this in other professional coaches when I hear interviews, that the wins aren't celebrated as much as the losses hurt and things like that. So it was more relief when we did well. And I was fortunate. I was in a really good program, a really supportive program, and thought I was just going to take a year away and then get back into it. But as that so happened, it sort of dovetailed into other opportunities. But yeah, it's very serious. I mean, sports science and nutrition and weightlifting and training 5-6 times a week, and games and the travel and the money that's in it at the university level in terms of scholarships, investment. And we had a $3 million stadium that was built by the New York Jets, the professional American football team, on our campus, because they wanted to use it 2 weeks a year. So they built us a soccer stadium so they could use it for exhibition games. So yeah, we were quite at the forefront there. Yeah.
I think at the time as well, Brian, when I was playing and when you did, I think American soccer and the college system was ahead of many of the professional teams in the UK in terms of what was available. When I first came over, training 5 days a week, head coaches, assistant coaches, physios, etc., it was probably a step up from.
So was it like almost more professional at that point?
Yeah, absolutely. And the college system now, I've just been on, the stadiums are getting built now for college programs. So I think there's a lot to learn from outside of the top Premier League teams in the UK. I think college soccer, and I think American MLS soccer and NWSL really have got some fantastic ideas of how to promote the game, but perhaps are not restricted by so much tradition.
Yeah, and I think that combining education with the draft system and everything it doesn't tend to, obviously it isn't present in the UK and other countries. I think that's a real positive. Just bringing it back to football, I know you're comparing to the UK and sport. I know, just wanted to touch, Nick, on Middlesbrough FC. So I know you spent some time there as an executive. So where did that fit into the journey to where we are?
This is only a 45-minute podcast, right? Nick's going to go on now for hours and hours.
Oh, is it?
It's passion, it's heart and joy.
From there, so.
Well, I'll wind you up and let you go. Yeah.
So my company plays soccer. I took a break and backpacked for 2 years to see how football, soccer could influence the world, could be used to empower communities, empower young people. And when I was in Bolivia, I got a message from Middlesbrough inviting me back as an executive. And so I went from the backpacker world to putting a jacket and tie on and sitting in directors' boxes in the Premier League. And so, yeah, I mean, I had an amazing season. Gareth was captain. We did win the Carling Cup and the Youth Cup. But I think my passion, as I talked about this before, I'd seen how sport, particularly soccer, could be used around the world to work in areas that I don't think anything else could get you ingrained into communities the way that soccer could. So I think my passion shifted. I was always going to run a football team in England sometime in my life. But I think that by the time I worked with Middlesbrough and had a fabulous experience and some great people, Steve McLaren was the manager.
I was going to say, is this around, I don't know if I've got the timing right, is this like Juninho and Ravanelli era?
Yeah, Juninho, it was his third trip, but it was the first trophy we'd ever won. So, you know, Mendieta was playing, Gareth, Ugo Ekiog, Boateng. It was a fabulous team that Steve Gibson had put together and had the vision to make Middlesbrough, you know, a small town in Yorkshire, as his joke, a real powerhouse in the league, that we were finishing in the top 7 or 8 and things like that. But I think my passion had shifted. I started to see what sport could do to impact the world. And so even, you know, having the time at the club, I was looking at other ideas to say, this is the most powerful sport in the world. How can we use it to do good?
Yeah, and it was a specific, I guess, sliding doors lightbulb moment where you thought, right, I'm going to set up Coaches Across Concept. Did you have a specific goal in mind at that point?
I left Middlesbrough and went into South Africa, and then I spent a year in Africa traveling from Cape Town to Casablanca. And I was actually on a bus from Entebbe, Uganda to Nairobi, Kenya, bouncing across dirt tracks. And there was a song on whatever I was listening to, Waiting for the World to Change. And that was the moment of, we didn't want it to be a Western organization going in and doing all the work. It was how we were going to partner with local groups and how we were going to adapt traditional soccer into being educational. And so that was, you know, I remember the moment exactly. And I've been on, as Brian will laugh, we've been on many 20-hour bus rides around the world since that moment. So when you're staring out the window with nothing to do other than to try and hold on to the seat so you don't get bounced off it, potentially that's the best place to have good ideas.
Yeah, so you had time to formulate that full business plan in your mind at that point.
Pretty much. And weirdly, a lot of it stayed consistent for a long time. So that we had a hat-trick initiative, a 3-year plan to work with local organizations. And so, you know, that stayed true for a long time. We just, unfortunately, demand for Coaches Across Continents just got so big so fast that we started to adapt the concept.
So how, in terms of early days, and Brian, when was it? I know you mentioned this is where we're dovetailing and you're getting involved. What's the size, or what the organization look like when you first came on board?
The size of the organization. Yeah, so I came in, Nick likes this story. So I came in, spoke to Nick probably 2009. And I think at that time it was probably working with a half dozen organizations in 3 countries. And I came on board in 2010 as a volunteer.
What were those countries, if you don't mind me asking, the first 3 that you were working in, if you can remember?
Nick, if you can remember, it was Tanzania was one.
Tanzania, Malawi.
And Kenya?
Maybe Uganda with Kenya. Yeah, one of that. So, yeah.
So I came in 2010. And again, one of the things I believe is you live the life you make. And so I had decided I wanted to follow a World Cup. So I called Nick. I knew it was a volunteer gig. And so I decided I was going to go follow the U.S. team at the World Cup. I did see the U.S.-England play, which was a 1-1 draw. I saw Landon Donovan's goal. I was even with the 6-yard line, and the goalie scored in the 93rd minute to send us through. You know, so I remember some great moments of that World Cup. But then I started volunteering for Coaches Across Continents basically immediately as the U.S. was eliminated. And at that time, I think that summer we were in 6 countries, 13 organizations in 6 countries working with. But my first organization was called Whiz Kids United out of Durban, South Africa. And my first day on the job, or coming in as a volunteer, they said, "We've got semifinal tickets. Do you want to go with us?" So I got a chance. My second or third day on the job was going to go watch Spain, Germany, and it was Puyol's header in the 2010 semifinals. So yeah, I mean, after that, I was hooked. Once you have a great first week like that, you can't turn it down. So now I've been happily stuck with coaches across continents, and Nick's been happily stuck, I think happily, with me in a role for the last 11 years or so.
In terms of, from a business point of view and a structural point of view, I know one organization, 2 brands, 4 divisions, really clear in terms of how to communicate that. Are you able to almost just expand on those, I guess the 2 brands start with, in terms of what it is, what the offer is?
Nick?
So the model was, in 2008, was a train-the-trainer model.
Okay.
We developed some curriculum that addressed 6 major points, like conflict prevention and HIV awareness and female empowerment. By the time now in 2021, we're working in 130 countries. So there has been adaptation as we've gone through the 13 or 14 years. I think we have about 800 or 1,000 other organizations who've applied for partnerships on our wait list now. So we had to find ways of being able to cope with the demand and also, use technology, etc. So last year we started the movement to have the CAC brand is working with the local programs. So we have the Instruct team works with coaches and young people, and our impact team work with organizations. So as we've seen what's needed in this industry, it's more than just going into a community for a week and doing some work and leaving and thinking you're going to have real change. It has to be a sustainable project, and you have to work 365 days a year with your partner.
I guess that's the real danger in parachute. I guess being seen as just parachuting and using a one-size-fits-all.
Potentially that's a Western model of thinking it works to be able to go in with people who think they may have some solutions to problems when really they may not even know the questions to ask, never mind the solutions to it. So we were very clear from the word go. And Brian, very influential on this with his master's in education, that our methodology was self-directed learning, was question-based rather than answer-driven. And we very much listened to the communities we talked to rather than come in and tell them what to do. So the CAC brand is working. We call it that's almost the fun stuff. That's the game. You get to be in the communities, you get to play the games, you get to work with the local organizations. And then we developed over the last 18 months, because of the work we're doing with corporations on corporate social purpose and with foundations, we branched off into what we call Creating Legacy 17, which is be able to allow corporates to work with us on a way that they can build sustainable CSR, CSP projects rather than just do one-day events for change. So those are the 2 brands, are Creating Legacy 17 and CAC, and they sit within coaches across continents.
Going back to that train-the-trainer model that you initially had, it almost feels like, just from what you said there, it's not, you weren't going in to try and provide, I guess, sports education courses. You weren't giving people level 1s, level 2s in coaching sport. It was about the intervention and then how you could engage and provide, I guess, more knowledge. Is that the model?
Yeah, for us, it was to create opportunities for local communities and local people to find solutions to their problems. For the first time, they can feel confident to talk about what's going on in their communities. And then there's some amazing intelligence, there's some amazing ideas. And I think that's what Coaches Across Continents and have the uniqueness to us, is that we created those spaces where solutions could come out that were locally owned.
So your partners, obviously then and now, they're coming in with they're already sports organizations, essentially. Is that right? Or they're coming in with the skills from sport?
Education, governments,
right.
Corporations. So we work on all levels. Brian, Brian sits in the Creating Legacies influence section now, who work with governments and federations and things like that.
I mean, I guess this is a bit of a flywheel for you, because I guess the more you prove the concept, the more you in demand, right? And it's like how do you deal with that from a business? I was going to say business development, but it's more almost managing the demand for you at this stage. Is that right?
Yeah, I think demand is always gone up. Fortunately, the Earth is a finite space, so we can't get that much bigger. That's one of the positives. It's only one planet.
We can go to Antarctica. There's still the plan to run the program.
From the management side of Coaches Across Continents, both our Creating Legacies brand, which does focus on consultancy and working with corporates and governments, and then our delivery brand CAC, which gets to work directly with local organizations, community-based organizations and coaches, is we've had to, especially over the last 3 years, as things really took off, was create good systems for our staff. We have a very passionate, extremely intelligent staff, and they all are similar to myself and to Nick in that, my dream work outfit is not a suit and tie, it's shorts and a t-shirt, athletic gear. And we're scattered all over the world. So right now we've got some staff in Cambodia, we've got some in Brazil, I'm in the Americas, some in the UK, some in Germany. So we're kind of all over the place. So from an organizational perspective, we really had to come up with systems, and the technology over the last 5-10 years, and everyone kind of knows obviously the Zoom platforms and stuff for calls and the Skypes and stuff. And we use one called Workplace, which is basically a virtual office for us to share ideas and stuff, became essential to how we could then better serve all of our partnerships.
Yeah, so you guys definitely ahead of the game before last year and lockdown and everything. You probably just took that in your stride, right?
Yeah, we've got a super partner as well called Sports Session Planner, who with curriculum design and what have you, that allowed us. So we immediately did a COVID curriculum. We were aware of COVID early in January because we're working in China, and our local partner groups were telling us this was different. This was something that was more serious than we were getting from Western.
You could see how that was affect all the countries real time.
Yeah, we made the decision late January, beginning of February. And one of the amazing things about our staff is that they saw it as an opportunity rather than saying, what can't we do? They all got together and say, okay, we can't do this. This is what we can do. And then we rolled out with SSP, Sports Session Planner. We'd worked with them. Magnus has been fantastic with us for 10 years. And we said, look, we need to do more. We need to make more access available now. How do we do it in different languages, more languages, etc.? So, credit always goes to the people involved in Coaches Across Continents, from the local coaches in the communities all the way through to Brian, rolls his sleeves up and is never afraid to get the dust up his nose and try to get on those bus rides. But I think that was really something I'm very, very proud of as an organization. So we had governments turning to our programs and having them go into the communities to talk about COVID because they were trusted. And we had a methodology that people could understand. So technology has become a big platform. But in saying that, we know that 50% of the kids that we work with don't have access to technology. So it wasn't quite as simple as England, America, etc., where so much more was available on technology. We had to find ways around those problems.
I know you mentioned the team there. What does that look like at the moment? So 132 countries. How big is the team, the organization, team of staff, and what's the kind of the setup?
So we developed, probably best me answering this, Brian, on the different things, but I'm actually talking about traditional boards later on this week. We wanted our Coaches Across Continents, the voices to be the kids. So ours is not a top-down board member strategy that goes top to bottom triangle. It's almost our theory of change that Brian developed with my mum, actually, with Dr. Judith Gates. The theory of change was bottom up. So we consider everyone at Coaches Across Continents to have a voice. So the 2.7 million children we worked with last year, the 9,000 coaches, the 132 countries. So it kind of works up there, and all the voices that come together, which design what we look like and how we adapt resources and how we deliver programs from there. So we have X number of community impact coaches. For the first time, we did accredited coaches, and these are the guys that are at the highest level of delivering sport as an educational tool. So it's a little bit unique, our model. It's not, it looks a little bit different.
James, I will say that, within all that, we each have our own sort of specialty, so we've got, a team that's 80% of the work is focused on Instruct, which is working with one-on-one with coaches and curriculums and stuff. And we've got another team that works in Impact, which works with organizations, community organizations, and helps them develop their monitoring and evaluation and their child protection policies and their social media plans and stuff like that. And then Nick and I sit in both, influence, and then we've got another team that sits in Innovate, which, their Innovate big role is to work directly with corporates. And Nick brought up our theory of change, which is, very much, grassroots, bottom up, listening to what the communities want to change in the world. But I think corporations and governments also have a role to play. And this is why we set up the Innovate and Influence divisions, is because they have a tremendous amount of power, not just the physical power, but the ability to change the world in terms of scalability, funding, that they can take a good idea and magnify it. They can put it on steroids, and make some of these great ideas go national, go international, and really make huge leaps and strides in the world in a very quick and effective manner.
Yeah, and I guess scaling up and the partnerships are really key. In terms of funded, or how the organization's funded as we speak right now, is that a blended approach, but is that predominantly sponsorships, or is it voluntary, or how's it all pulled together?
So I think on the annual review, it's split between corporations, foundations, some major donors, etc. But we fit best, without a doubt, with corporate partnerships.
Right.
With foundations, a little bit difficult because we're not a traditional charity that sits in a place and is managed or whatever. We're resource.
Would you say you're a global? So would you say you're a global organization? So no real head office. It's like really distributed. Everyone's distributed team.
Yes,
and it's like just a global organization rather than being a.
We should put chips in people, because in a normal year, Brian would go to 20 countries and Nora would be in 20 countries. So it's not even that global side of things. It's following the dot around the world. We should develop an app that is the Coach Across Continents flight tracker app.
Yeah.
To see where.
Oh, we would be able to track your phone anyway, Brian. And see where you are.
We'll see where we are from there, yeah. And also just with the voices of, we're on 6 continents, and we have partnerships and coaches all around, and so we are listening to the collective noise that's made from around the world.
Yeah, but sorry, I interrupted you talking about the corporate partners and that being because I know you mentioned CSR or CSP, right? Like that corporate social purpose. Is it almost, obviously that's the way you want them to be, where they feel like they have a purpose rather than responsibility? To me always feels a bit of a negative. I don't know whether you feel like I must have to do this when it's not really what I'm into. I just want to run a program for some headlines. But yeah, for yourself, that partnership with corporates, how does that normally set up or stack up in terms of funding?
I think the difference, responsibility and purpose. Responsibility is somewhat a check. Is some money to go and do something. Purpose is when it's embedded inside the organization and the story gets told, the employees understand what's going on, and it becomes something that they're living. It's not just something that they put on the back end of the.
Yeah, it's a bit more like responsibility as well. Let's say it's a bit more of an afterthought, right?
Yeah, it's not as developed as potentially it could be by 2021. I think there's a lot of things that corporations are looking to do. And I think there's a big need in the industries for trust between corporations and charities and NGOs. They understand there's some amazing NGOs out there that if they're given the direction and they listen to, can run fantastic programs. They don't have to be micromanaged, but they can deliver some fabulous stuff. So we've been very fortunate with partnerships that Brian has put together and our teams have put together with groups like Nike, who we've built relationships with. The partnership has been 6 or 7 years now. And Brian developed a fantastic concept with employee engagement, an ambassador program that was nominated at the ESPN Sports Humanitarian of the Year award for what had been put together there. So I think there are a lot of corporations, or a number of corporations now, who are starting to see the benefits of working directly with strong NGOs, strong charities, because for less money, they can have a much bigger impact than they can have by potentially sponsoring a football club or putting some billboards up, etc. And they get stories 365 days a year.
Yeah, and I guess if you ever had any, maybe for yourself, Brian, have ever had any kind of conflicts in terms of a partner who wanted to get involved and it wasn't quite a good fit for you, or where you think maybe this isn't, essentially what they're trying to achieve isn't aligning with your values?
I can't think of one where we've ever had a dust up or a blow up, where it just wasn't quite the right fit. I think that
I guess you must turn people away, though, right?
I think that sometimes you get into talking. The good thing is, and I will provide sort of a challenge, the good thing is everyone is coming from a similar place in terms of wanting to make a positive change in the world. So you come from the same background, the same platform, and you might have slightly different ideas how to get there. I think the ones that we struggle with, and this is part of our role as a global thought leader and as working in the industry, Coaches Across Continents is, we are experts in terms of community development. We continue to learn, we continue to study, but that's our expertise in how to do that. And corporations, or sometimes, individuals or governments, their expertise might be somewhere else. And so sometimes we have to have some long and insightful conversations on what they think they want to do, and then us coming and saying, well, if we adjust this, it could have a stronger impact. And the traditional 1970s model is, somebody coming in saying, I'm going to build this country a library or a sports field. And in fact, put your name on it. And that's, I'm doing what I want to do because that's what they need. When the modern thing might be, this group might say, we don't need a library at all. What we really need is someone to educate the teachers and to create a internet platform, HubSpot, for a hotspot for them, so that we can get access to it, because the libraries are completely dated. So we have some conversations where we have to, I guess, modernize might be a word, but again, everyone's coming from the place of they want to create positive social change. So I would say almost always we get there. Sometimes it's not quite the right fit with what a corporation or a foundation are looking for and what we do, but oftentimes it is. And I think that as long as you have open and good conversations, we have an opportunity to really educate some people in terms of what we see in the world, and they have a chance to educate us on what their priorities and core mission values are for their organizations as well. So I think it's always a good thing to have those conversations.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just touching on one of the major projects, a new partnership or a new project launching with, is that with Rexona? Is that the one that's the most recent? I don't know if you want to expand on that and give the listeners a bit of information on just as an example of something you do and something brand new.
It's a fabulous partnership with one of our closest groups, with Think Beyond, who are based in London, Beyond Sport and Think Beyond, and we work very closely with them. And Rexona had an idea of the world has stopped moving as people have got into cities, as computers have come in, as COVID-19 has come in, that there was less opportunities for people to move. So people were getting less fit. There was obviously lots of knock-on effects from a lack of movement. So we've been working to develop their concept to how to educate the world onto movement and what does movement mean to everybody. So movement seems very simple. You get up and you walk around. Well, there's so many more things that can come into movement. It's movement with friends. It can be games. It can be doing something by yourself. So there's many concepts on that, but we've reimagined it. It has been launched, and the actual program goes live within the next 10 days with Rexona, where we've developed educational videos, etc., so that it can be used in 2 or 3 of their key markets.
Right, and so that in terms of how you've developed that, that's going to be launched into, when you say key markets, that's like number of countries, right, or continents?
Yeah, so Rexona have chosen the countries where they want to start, which I think is, what corporates should do, is to identify the areas they think they could be very strong in, or do, and then that's where the focus becomes at the beginning. But with lots of groups, the good groups like Rexona and Think Beyond, I think they're now becoming aware that something can't change in a year. It's not that you can click your fingers, do a few new games, and the whole world has changed. That doesn't work that way. And so I think a lot of the most modern corporations are recognizing that 3-year strategies are the types of things to look at now to really, if they really want social impact and change, it can't be done over 6 months or 9 months. It's just, if that was the case, education could change that quickly. If that was the case, football could change that quickly.
That's probably important for the NGOs, charities out there, even smaller ones than yourself, where funding being that cycle of annual or 6 month having to bid again, or being able to set up the partnerships that you have, where you've got long-term Nike for 6 years plus, you can almost invest in your team and your infrastructure to make it and even improve the impact even further, which a lot of charities.
It's a massive problem. I think you hit the nail on the head that a big weakness in the charity world is that too many live day to day. You can't plan a 3-year strategy in the same way you can with businesses. The money has to be shown to go into certain places, which perhaps is not the best for a long-term change. And so I think the good charities now, though, and the good corporations are recognizing that there's investment in research, there's investment in longevity. All of those things are starting to happen now. But the traditional charity model of corporations and foundations were, here's some money, deliver this, and give back this result. And that's not necessarily what is the best thing now for the world and for change. That's been tried for 100 years and potentially hasn't worked. So there may be some new models that could be looked at. And I think the good corporations are seeing that now, that the investment can't just be for one-off programs, that if they really want change and sustainability, you plan it ahead.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, let's the leadership focus on delivering the program rather than thinking about the next bid or the next application or partnership. What would you say? I mean, in terms of day-to-day operations, I know loads of challenges over the last year, but what are kind of the recurring challenges that you find yourselves, I guess, banging your head against the wall for if they come up? I don't know if that.
I'll start, and then Nick can jump in with a few others. I think similar to everyone, and obviously we don't want to harp on it, but I think a lot of people thrive on, or at least our staff certainly thrives on, change and challenges. And so just the nature of the world in the last 14, 16 months has not really allowed our staff to experience new places and stuff. So, and I know this would probably resonate with a lot of people that are working from home and stuff, that motivation is more up, down, up, down, up, down, instead of a nice even pace. So for us, it's how do we engage with our staff? And we've had to be very conscious about it. Nick and I talk every Monday morning. We've got recurring appointments with different staff members, different places, because just that interaction is crucial. I didn't mention it in the very beginning, but I had an 8-month stint working for National Geographic. And I got a chance to listen to some really famous sociologists and stuff, and humans are social creatures. I think that's had an impact on everyone's sort of mental health and work habit and lifestyle habits over the last year. So for me, that's the biggest one in the last year. And we do see it starting to change in some places. Hopefully it will continue to improve and we'll be coming out of this soon. So for me, that's the big one. How do you navigate a staff that lives in 12 different time zones, engage with them, motivate them, and go from there? Because if not, then we're not serving our partners well. We're not serving our corporate partners well. That's my big one.
Yeah, I guess everyone can resonate with that one as well at the moment. So yeah, for sure.
I think from the business end, again, Brian and the teams are very, very thoughtful. Last January, we predicted that 2021 was going to be much more difficult than 2020.
Really? Okay.
2020 lockdown. Now it's, we have fantastic programs in India.
Yeah.
We just were very, 6 or 8 weeks ago working with the World Health Organization and watching what was happening. I mean, it's chaos in India now from there. And with corporations, last year, they'd booked projects, they'd booked things. They knew what it looked like because they're businesses, they're a year ahead of the time. But now in 2021, the CSR departments, of course, marketing departments, etc., it's a much more difficult job for them to understand what can they do in this year. Is America opening up? Is England opening up? Is after May the 17th, what does England look like? How does that change? Can they have events? Can they do those? So I think that 2021, and also, from the sad part of the world is that I think it's something like 75% of all vaccines have gone to 12 countries. Yeah. Something crazy like that. So as in England and as in America, the change has been fantastic, and people are taking the vaccines. Much of our world, much of our 132 countries, barely any of the young people in the communities have seen a vaccine, never mind had the opportunity to have one. So I think 2021 is a bigger challenge to us and probably into 2022 than 2020 was, as strange as that sounds.
No, totally. I mean, from the UK point of view, I don't know, some of the listeners will probably resonate that it's almost gone from nothing to everything. So now we can open back up and everything starts, and you need to be ready to go and you need to scale back up again. And when businesses have been struggling this whole time, and then now suddenly they need to serve a huge demand. And it might be the same with yourselves. You might have all the CSR departments all ringing on the same page to say, let's get going again.
There's the I think one of the things that I think everyone has become more aware of is how interconnected everyone is or should be. I think we took some of that for granted, and I think a lot of people are coming out of it with seeing this as wanting to get more involved, because I think it is something that we've all had to take a step back. We've all had to change our own habits and everything. So now I think a lot of people are much more aware of it, and there is opportunity. I do think that, we're doing a lot more, as Nick said, with technology. We were fortunate that none of our partnerships, either funding partnerships with corporates and stuff, or any of our organizational partnerships, we're very proud that none of those have closed down. We've had individual projects be postponed or canceled, because those funds were needed for, emergency relief. We've been able to provide small funding to some of our staffs through our partnerships. Our community-based organizations, we were able to provide, $3,000 and $5,000 to a few of them, and that keeps their staff on board for another year, which, it feeds families. It keeps a lot of the developing world going. So coming out of this, I do think there's huge opportunities for corporations that say, this is, our core value is to work on quality education, UN SDG, 4, and how can we do this in these markets? And NGOs like Coaches Across Continents or like Think Beyond are the ones that can help bring those to life.
100%. From our perspective, I guess we always look at, for our listeners, what is it like to run an organization like yourself? And you're both strategists, and I guess what we're trying to grasp from you is, do you have any I guess philosophies or theories that you've developed over the years and that you could kind of share with the listeners about how they could go about expanding their organization?
We've certainly evolved from what it was in 2008 to 2021, and now we have staff from 50, 60, 70 countries, so you have to change your language, you have to change your work habits, etc. from there. But we've always had a bit of fun using football analogies to the style that we're looking for and what have you. So this year we've moved into the no sweeper system in terms of everyone has very clear roles, everyone has clear objectives, results based, etc. And so that's been fun as more responsibility has gone on to staff. And we have very clear core values. So we live by our core value. And that's the question asked on each decision is, does it tick the boxes in there? Is this the type of organization that we want to be? So we're not a traditional NGO. We're not top down. We have things that seem normal to us, that A plus B equals question mark in our world. There's no way we can predict definite outcomes for anything that we're going to do. We understand 80% of what can happen, but no one could have predicted COVID-19.
Yeah.
So that changed everything that's going to go on from there. One thing that's made things clearer for us in telling our story is the UN Sustainable Development Goals, because now it allows all of our groups, and Brian's report shows that I think we hit 15 UN Sustainable Development Goals and 52 targets of the 169 targets. We can be very clear now on telling that story of exactly what it is that's going. But the big thing is that the core values have stayed the same, but we've adapted over 14 years as the demand has grown and what we could provide has changed. I think we started off with 6 resources back in 2008, and now we have 80 resources that are available for all of our partner groups. So I think that's been it's been cool. And the last one on that is that I think that we've been really good at making changes when we're doing well. And again, the football analogy, the Alex Fergusons and the Klopps, is that the best time to make changes when you're successful.
Yeah.
If
to sustain
try and be.
Exactly.
So one of our core values is, the starting point of being better is when you're the best, is when you're doing things and you think we can't do anything different. We can't. That's when we look at it and say, actually, we probably can. Here's a more efficient way of doing this. Here's a new challenge that we can take on. So yeah, it's a bit of fun that Brian has with me, because at the beginning of the year he says, well, what you're planning to change next year? What do we start talking about?
The marginal gains, right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, but I think Coaching Across Continents, with the vision of all the staff, I think that they embrace change very, very quickly and say, yeah, we recognize this is the way. So we've just started, just to quickly finish on this, we've just started a campaign that we're calling it 100 for 100, to engage 100 new foundations or corporations in the next 100 business days. And part of that is not necessarily for funding for us, it's to educate them on what opportunities now are available in the world and what does the world need? What does they need from corporations and foundations that may be different than it was in January 2020?
I was just going to give a very short answer to that. So I think one of the good things about Coaches Across Continents, and I hinted at it earlier, make sure you work with passionate people, intelligent people, and then give them difficult problems to solve. And then they'll surprise you. So, if you give an intelligent, passionate person a mundane task, they don't get it done. They just don't complete it. But if you have passionate, intelligent people and you say, this is something we need to figure out, that's, I think, how I learn best. And I think a lot of our own staff and coaches that we work with globally. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I love it. I mean, it fits with the kind of growth mindset against fixed mindset. Like you say, you coming in with an open mind into everything you're doing and empowering the team to make their own decisions, I guess.
The one thing we haven't adopted, though, is banks are for.
I thought you were going to say. I thought you were going to say. I thought you were going to say you parked the bus last year. 2020 was parked the bus. Guys, I know we're conscious of time. I always have a couple of questions to ask, more personal ones, in terms of how you go about, I guess, staying on top form performance. I guess environment's one, so can't help being in the environments you are and working from those nice sunny environments, or tropical climates. But do you have anything in kind of your routines or habits that you put in place to kind of help you with leading the organization or your business performance?
I'll go first. I surf, and it doesn't matter that it's surfing. Like for me, anytime I get out on the water, whether it's a boat, swimming, surfing, I have to be in the moment, and I don't think about anything else. And that separation helps me. And I know for a lot of people, it might be going for a long run. It might be meditation. It might be yoga. It could be taking a nap. For me, being able to completely disconnect and be in the moment on something else helps me when I do focus on work.
Yeah, love that. I mean, what about you, Nick? Do you have anything that you tend to?
I think as an organization, Brian, it was his 10-year anniversary last year, and it just done a year of 150,000 miles or whatever. And we said, Brian, stop 10 weeks, just go and have a break. And I think the industry we work in is so intensive. You do see some pretty horrific things. It's not an easy life when you're going into places and working with child soldiers or kids being sex trafficked or medical trafficked or whatever. And so it's very, very important. We recognize that our senior staff have all been around for a long time now. So we work very, very hard to support emotionally and to make certain physically, mentally they have breaks. We just enforced this year half-day Friday as a way of saying to people, because when you're working in 6 continents, a work day can go from 4 o'clock in the morning till midnight quite easily in terms of when things are coming through. So we're trying different things to keep people fresh and active from there. My big thing, the big learning thing for me was to turn off notifications.
I love that one. Yeah, I do the same.
Because as like everybody else sees it, and when something's in there, am I going to take a look at it from there? A huge challenge. I think having worked at the highest level in football and worked at the highest level in the NGO world, there's no comparison. The NGO world is brutally hard. We're working on life and death things. My meetings yesterday with India, the groups are generally scared in India. It's life and death. It's much worse than it was in the UK, because the UK had fantastic national health services and things like that. So I think it's things we need to improve on all the time and recognize that.
No, definitely. Managing that trauma has got to be really difficult. I think you also insight into you're working remotely and the Zoom calls and everything, that's become a massive part of everyone else's world. But you almost, working from home, you find yourself working a lot more, right? So you're contactable whenever. There's no travel time or anywhere decompression time during the day. It's just call to call. Yeah.
It used to be funny that's what we call the 20-hour flight. That's my day off. I'm sitting down because I can't get access to Wi-Fi while I'm sitting on the plane 14 hours. So strangely, that has changed the world.
So just last question from me. We always ask everyone, it's more of a reflective one. So if you could go back to yourself, maybe as a graduate or early years, if you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice before you started out in your career, what would that be? It didn't have to be related to business or running an organization, but just a little piece of advice to give to your younger self.
That's tough.
I think that as we're talking with, we're very fortunate we have a great relationship with Harvard University and a lot of the VCs and a lot of the strong universities from there. Is we do tell the young people now is find your passion. Don't do that. And I think Brian and I have been very, very lucky in our careers that while we work ridiculously hard, it is still fun. It's still, we're in sport, we're in education, we travel and things like that. But I don't think enough young people, and so maybe that's my advice with myself, is to continue as a 20-year-old, find the passion and just follow it. Just keep doing those things. Don't go where you should be going or what people tell you. Find the things that you like and follow that.
Yeah,
so,
no, I love that one.
I think I
still one of our sponsors' tagline and just say, just do it. Similar. Sure. Well, I think taking time for yourself to figure out what you want is important. I went straight from undergrad straight into a master's degree where I basically did 3 semesters in 2 classes because I didn't want to pay more money. Then immediately got into working and stuff. And it wasn't until I actually left university coaching and had sort of my year and a half working, putzing around really, before I started working with coaches across continents, that I figured out, it's still my philosophy. I think it's on one of my social media pages. You live the life you make and choose what you love and pursue it with reckless abandonment. And I think too many people wait for that, or they regret something in the past, and the past is gone. If you like Disney, the old Hakuna Matata, which is Swahili, it's in the past. It doesn't matter, but figure out what you really want to be doing. And if you have the opportunity to do it without shirking responsibility and accountability, do it. So I think that's especially for the young leaders coming out of the universities today, is figure that out. Don't go into the prescribed life.
Love that. Totally. I think that'll resonate with a lot of people who've been forcibly restricted or having to take that break for a year and think about what they're doing and maybe make a change. So guys, really appreciative of your time and understand the time differences and getting everyone together. So thank you so much for joining me today.
James, absolute pleasure. I loved it.
Enjoy. I'll see you in Durham in a month's time.
Yeah, maybe the pubs might be open then. Yeah, exactly. For sure.
Brilliant. So thanks so much.
Thanks, man. Thank you for listening to this week's show. You can subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can write to us at dryphase.podcast@coordinate.cloud, tweet us at coordinatesport, or follow us on Instagram at coordinate_sports, or on my account at James_Ventures. This episode was produced by Nancy Kwamboka, with support from Claire Goodchild and Lola Small, with special thanks to Rochelle. I'm James Moore, and you've been listening to The Drive Phase from Coordinate Sport.